Welcome to the Pharmacy Future Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Future Leaders is part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, focusing on pharmacy student perspectives, interviews, and the future outlook of our pharmacy industry.
This is Dalton Fabian, third-year Doctor of Pharmacy student at Drake University College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, and you're listening to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm your co-host, Tony Guerra, for the Pharmacy Future Leaders Podcast, broadcasting from the Health and Public Services building on the DMACC Ankeny campus in Iowa. Connect with me on Twitter at Tony_PharmD, or check out my Tony PharmD YouTube channel. You can find over 800 videos on the top 200 drugs that support my audiobooks, memorizing pharmacology, and how to pronounce drug names. Today we have Dalton, a P3 student at Drake University College of Pharmacy, interested in data analytics and health outcomes. He's served as president of the APhA-ASP chapter at Drake, the executive council of Phi Lambda Sigma, the Pharmacy Leadership Society, two-time co-chair of the Pharmacy and Health Sciences Day, and then was also service chair of the Drake Pharmacy Unified Group of Students. It has the acronym DRxugs, pronounced drugs. So, Dalton, welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, everyone's leadership road is a little bit different. Tell us what you're doing now and how you got there.
Sure. So my leadership road really started when I was a P1 student. So at Drake, I did it's a 0 to 6 program. You do 2 years of pre-pharmacy, and then you're accepted into the full-blown pharmacy program. So those first 2 years, though, I was kind of getting used to being in college, taking those general education classes. So I was involved a little bit during those first 2 years, but especially once I got into the pharmacy program, that's when I started to realize, oh, hey, I'm in the pharmacy program. I really need to be building my leadership credentials or that sort of thing, just getting more involved in organizations and more involved in the college. So actually, based on some advice I got from a committee chair that I was working with, I was helping with some over-the-counter medication education at various health fairs in the Des Moines area. And the co-chair, Kelsey Laufer, she really encouraged me. She saw how involved I was getting and how passionate I was about getting involved. So she actually recommended that I run for a leadership position in APhA-ASP. So that was the first organization that I really got heavily involved in. And so during my P1 year, that spring, winter/spring, I was trying to pick between a couple of positions, but I decided to run for president-elect. And so when I decided to do that, I had to, give a speech in front of all the chapter, which was terrifying for me.
I understand. I hear people would rather die than do public speaking, and so that's pretty brave, I guess I would say.
Yeah. So that really, after that, and I was elected president-elect, but then it started to finally kind of come together, and I applied for a couple other positions at Drake. Those other positions that I have held, like the service chair, serving on the Phi Lambda Sigma executive council at Drake. But that one person who, really suggested, hey, I think you'd be really good in this sort of position, like that started my leadership experiences at Drake.
Okay, and we see this kind of over and over again, and you're at a SLAC, a small liberal arts college. My wife went to Drake too, and she absolutely loved her experience there. There's not this huge research agenda where the professors are not involved. It's kind of the opposite. It's they're extremely involved, and that involvement, I believe, begins even before the P1 year, where you get some interaction or you have some. What are the courses? Are they CAP or something like that are pharmacy related?
Yes. So our CAPS classes, the goal of that, you have one each of your first 4 semesters, and the goal of those are to really make you think about what you want to do maybe in pharmacy. So they present a lot of different career options. They'll also have professors come in and speak about what they do when they're at their practice sites. So that's a really important part. But I think just in general, though, the professors at Drake are very, very interested in making sure you succeed. All of the mentors I've had at Drake have been phenomenal. They've been able to introduce me to people, but it really does start right as soon as you get there. Like I remember coming on a campus visit when I was a junior in high school, and everyone, when you would walk past them, they'd say hello, where that wasn't happening at some other schools.
Especially outside the Midwest. That's something right. that I got used to. When I went back to Washington, D.C., it was very strange to have people avert their eyes when you look at them, where I'm waving to them, and they must have thought I was a crazy person. So
it's a very nice thing.
But let's see what you've got these leadership positions, and what is your area of expertise, though? So as you're developing, now you're a P3, you're going to your P4 year, you've made your selections for your APPE rotations, or API rotations, as some people say. So where are you now in terms of, okay, this is what I want to do, these are the experiences I want to have, and then what are some things that we can learn from your expertise?
Sure. So I think I'm interested in the ambulatory care side of pharmacy, because I think that once you get into that area, and you maybe if you move on to other roles or other areas of pharmacy, I feel like that
it's foundational.
The skills that you learn in that are very applicable to making decisions. So like obviously my one of my areas of expertise more so is data analytics. I'm really interested just in general, computer science, like programming, that sort of thing. So being involved in the ambulatory care, being on or providing clinical services to patients, that will better help me in the future when I get more into data analysis know, okay, this is what really happens when a pharmacist is providing care to a patient. Like, how do I make that process better? What steps can make that process better? And sort of do the data analysis with maybe lab values, that sort of thing, to provide better patient care. So at that point, I might not be the one providing patient care, but then you can use that data to help other people, so you have a bigger reach.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're talking about outcomes or metrics and those kinds of things that really let us know the patient is getting better, because often the way that we were, it was, here's your medicine, the doctor will check up on you every couple of months, but now the pharmacist has certainly lent their expertise. And I guess I would really be curious is, how do you pick up computer programming, not necessarily programming, but computers in a pharmacy curriculum? Where is that?
So it's not really there. So I've been interested. I mean, in high school, I took a few programming classes and I really liked it. And one of my teachers back then really suggested, they knew I wanted to go into healthcare, but they really suggested that I, try to work in some computer science classes because they thought that I had an aptitude for that. So then once I got to Drake, I was just interested in, when I had open classes, I would fill those with computer science classes. So throughout my education, the two have been very separate. Like, I've learned them separately, fitting in the computer science classes when I had time in my schedule.
Okay, when you say computer science, I know that means a lot of different things. I can program in Python, and I know HTML, so I can make websites and I can do analysis of documents and things like that. What kind of languages or what kind of programming or what kind of classes specifically are you taking if somebody was interested in this?
Sure. So this year, some of the classes I focused on, so in the fall, I took a machine learning course. So actually it was taught in Python, but it's Python and the language R are kind of the main data analysis, like framework languages, sort of.
Sure, kind of taking over for Perl, which was the old one.
Right.
Had some limitations. Okay.
Yeah, but so this machine learning, it's related to artificial intelligence. So it's coming up with different, or using different algorithms to learn from a data set that you have that you can apply to other examples that would fit also into that data set. So it's really about training the computer to learn from some data that's already been presented with.
Okay. Yeah. And so as you've been kind of going through this, where you've got these two separate tracks, how's your perception changed about something? So you come into pharmacy school, you're interested in computers, you're interested in pharmacy, you've had X number of years at pharmacy school and had these computer classes. What's one thing that you thought before that you don't think now, that you've changed your mind on?
Well, I didn't really, I thought that they would never really intersect. I mean, I knew they could intersect, but I thought I would be doing them sort of separately in the future. Like I do some web design stuff too, and I always figured that would be sort of like a side project. Like those languages I know for that would be side projects. But especially within the last, 6 months or so, I've really seen how I'm interested in health outcomes and how that would combine my pharmacy knowledge with the data analytics side and the programming side.
Okay, so it all should at graduation. I'll probably be at the Drake graduation in a year. I can come to you and I can say, so did you figure it all out? Did it all come together? And now do you have the rest of your life planned? You'll say, yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you shared with me something that was a little bit of a rough spot for you at Drake, but tell me. I want to say what's the worst thing that happened, but this isn't really necessarily the worst thing that happened. But as a student at the time, I expect it probably was. But what's the worst thing that happened to you as you've gone through your pharmacy road?
Sure. So yeah, definitely at the time it wasn't the greatest thing to ever happen. But so last spring, I was originally part of the PharmD class of 2017. So the class that would be graduating in May. And so after the spring semester last year, I mean, there's no way to put it, but I had failed therapeutics, and that meant that I would have to essentially stay an extra year of pharmacy school and not go on rotations this past May, but instead go on rotations this upcoming May.
Yeah, it's actually just even, I'm having pains just even hearing you say it. And the first thing I thought of was tuition. And I thought, oh my gosh, you've got to repay the whole tuition. And you told me that that's a fallacy. That's not exactly right. You just have to pay for the class that you are repeating, right?
Yeah. So I just have to pay per credit. And actually, the data analytics minor that I have and I'm working on actually came after that. So I'd never had enough time in the curriculum to actually declare a data analytics minor or a computer science minor. There just wasn't enough room in my schedule. But once that happened, I was able to take the 3 extra classes I needed. So I'm just paying per credit for each of those classes. So I'm not paying the whole year tuition.
Okay.
Thankfully.
I just and what it seems like is that if you could do it all over again, maybe you would have found some way to do this differently, where you could have fit the computers and the pharmacy together. But it sounds like you got some breathing room. Tell me how this actually ended up as a positive, because I've from everyone I've heard that has continued on that had this happen, they've actually been very positive about it and said, "Wow, it really gave me time to do what I really wanted to do, really learn a lot about myself." So how did this come out as a positive?
Yeah. So actually these past, 8 months or so that I've been redoing this year have actually turned out to be probably one of the better things that has happened to me during pharmacy school. So because of that, I was able to add that data analytics minor and really take classes that were interesting to me. That machine learning class, I'm fascinated by that sort of stuff. Right now I'm taking a cloud computing class, which is using doing data analytics, but on a scale that's too big to fit inside of your normal laptop or computer. So it's running data analysis in the cloud.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's really neat. That's a side of, I've always wanted to know about that, but I've never known how to teach myself. So being able to take this class has been awesome. But just regardless of that, this past year, I ran my first marathon in November, had more time to train for that. I started working at another pharmacy where I get to have more patient interaction than I was having before. I was also able to work at my internship. It's a company. They have a website, and patients can upload their blood sugars and blood pressures. So it's a sort of a central location for patients to keep some of their health data that they're collecting on their own, and then they're able to share it with their doctors, like medication lists and those different lab values. But so this past 8 months or so has actually turned out to be really productive and beneficial to what I now want to do in the future, sort of with the health outcomes, ambulatory care setting.
And then where do you go after your P4 year to, kind of continue with this, or can you work as a pharmacist with what you've learned, or are you thinking about, you're getting a minor, so there's no computer science bachelor's, but
right.
what comes after this? Is it residency, or is it fellowship, or is it something different?
Sure. I think there's really a lot of options. So like things I'm leaning towards now are residencies, doing, a general PGY1, but there are some PGY2s that have more of a health outcomes focus. So I think those would be beneficial for that. There's also some managed care residencies with like insurance companies that have a focus in that health outcomes, but there also are fellowships that you can do with pharmaceutical companies where you might be at a university the first year of the program studying health outcomes, pharmacoeconomics, and then that second year you transition to the pharmaceutical company where you're doing sort of applying what you've learned. And then there's also the grad school route of master's PhD programs in public health, health outcomes, those sorts of things.
All right, so plenty of choices. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Well, going to maybe the next generation, the people that are following you, what blanket advice would you have for someone who's interested in more than, and I don't want to say just pharmacy, but is interested in adding something like, the data analytics that or entrepreneurship or public health? How do you add that in, and then also have these leadership activities that you have too? What would you say to them? Maybe a P2 or a P1?
I would say try to, just like I did when I first came to Drake, and just kind of doing it just because I was interested in taking a class or two just in a subject. You can use that when you interview for future jobs. Like, say, I had this experience when I was in college. I think it's important to really, especially with how many colleges of pharmacy there are, to have sort of a specialty in addition to your PharmD, to have something else that you can lean on and differentiate yourself from others. I think that's the most important part. And obviously, this has actually worked out well for me. Networking is so important, and we hear that all the time.
Yeah,
Everyone says that. But especially in my case, the data analytics isn't taught as much in our curriculum as other subjects. So it's really made me, though, have to network to learn more about what different roles that a pharmacist could have in data analytics. So our professors, that's not their primary job, but they know people who know how to integrate the data analytics and pharmacy. So it's really made me have to network, which I think has been beneficial for future career choices, obviously. If you already know people in the industry that you are wanting to get into, it's a lot easier to find out, is this a good option for me, or is it not what I thought it was?
Yeah, I'm as I've been doing these recordings, and I think I've done 20 or so. I can now almost brand most of the people that, or I know their brand. So if I think of Brandon Gerleman, I think of the small town pharmacist who's going to be mayor of his town, or
Sure.
I think of someone who's going to do their starting their own residency. And, they built that, or they're going to build that. And so it sounds like, and I don't want to put it as the data analytics guy, because I think that makes it too small. But I think what it really is someone who's reintroducing, this computing power into the analytics so that you can talk to other people, and so that we're not just talking to ourselves in pharmacy. You'll be able to talk with the computer scientists and maybe to some extent the engineers and say, hey, if we could build this and we could do it this way, I think we could really make a statement and then really benefit the outcomes. Well, I really appreciate all of this and you being so transparent with that tough time that you had. It sounds like it's all come out well, and that you've got a pretty exciting P4 year ahead of you. I know people would want to get in touch with you and kind of maybe learn more. What's the best way for someone to get in touch with you?
Best way, either Facebook, Dalton Fabian, or I do have a personal website with a contact section. So that website is daltonfabian.com. So they can definitely get in touch with me there.
Okay, awesome. And then maybe just a couple of quick hit questions. I won't interrupt. What's your best daily ritual to keep your work on track?
Like most type A pharmacy students, I love to do lists, but I would also say running. I mean, I can go out on a run, get away from homework, that sort of stuff. It really puts my mind at ease. And, when I come back, I'm ready to go, ready to study, ready to do homework, that sort of thing.
Sounds good. And then the best career advice you've ever received?
Best career advice would probably be I had talked to the founder and CEO of a pharmacy analytics company, and he was able to give me, I would suggest going this route, stay away from this other route because of XYZ. He was able to lay out this sort of just map of possibilities, and it was a fantastic conversation that I had with him.
Yeah, we're doing the San Francisco Half Marathon with a number of other students and pharmacists, and certainly, I think we go up 24 stories in the first mile, right? 240 feet or something like that. So I think we'll both be able to give advice to other people, like start slow, really slow, heart rate low, So,
yes.
But that's fantastic. And then what inspires you?
I would say my parents, for all the hard work they did to be able to raise us to have opportunities that we have. My fiance, and just other pharmacy students that are doing amazing things, going on to residency, today being match day, just with all the cool things that they have been able to do for their patients.
There's something special about a match day that lands on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
So I'll be seeing them at the, I'm sure I'll be seeing them today. So,
yes.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Dalton, for being on the Pharmacy Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
If you're a pharmacy future leader interested in being on the Pharmacy Podcast, go ahead and email me at aagara@dmac.edu. If your organization is interested in sponsoring the Pharmacy Future Leaders Podcast, please go to pharmacypodcast.com under contact and contact Todd Urey. We thank you so much for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Pharmacy Future Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag Pharmacy Future Leaders.